Welcome, all you beautiful people out there. Today, DerekJ Speaks is bringing you a review of the September 21st, 2022 edition of AEW Dynamite, the second annual AEW Grand Slam show live from Arthur Ashe Stadium in Queens, New York. And just like last year, was a great show with an off the charts excellent crowd. We had much of the same this year. In fact, I would say this year's Dynamite Grand Slam had a slight edge over last year's. Of course, last year's show had the huge Kenny Omega Bryan Danielson match, but after that one match, nothing else really could follow it. On this show, we had several incredible matches from the very beginning all the way to the very end, with a few shocking finishes and a few other very surprise moments that made this show very entertaining to watch and made me quite envious of the wonderful people in Queens who got to experience it live. Just an absolutely outstanding crowd all night long, just hot for everything, reacted exactly the way you wanted them to for a lot of the big moments and big matches that took place on this show. So, excellent stuff here from AEW, the fans, the wrestlers, the talent, and a great show that put all the drama and chaos and controversy coming out of All Out right in the rear view. In fact, when you look at the finish of the main event on this show, it almost feels like All Out never even happened. We are right back in the exact same place that we were before that pay-per-view. All is right in the world, so to speak. So, we will get to that and more, but let's first start off at the very top with the opening match of this great show. It was for the Ring of Honor World Championship. Claudio Castagnoli defending the championship against Chris Jericho, who was on a quest to win his 8th World Championship. Ring of Honor being one promotion that Jericho has never competed for. He's never competed for that World Championship. So that story was a big factor and build behind this match and made the finish not exactly shocking. But I thought that this was a very great match. Chris Jericho, he has been putting on quite a few really, really good matches this year. There was a period of time where, not gonna lie to you, Jericho's in-ring work just was not as strong as it once was. It felt like he took a step back. But this year of 2022, he's had several incredible matches all year with the likes of Eddie Kingston, Jon Moxley, Bryan Danielson, and now here against Claudio. They had Ian Riccaboni, of course, the main play-by-play commentator for all ROH shows. He was out there with Excalibur, Taz, and Tony Schiavone. The three of them were the main core commentary team for the rest of the night, but they had Riccaboni in on commentary for this match. The match, with the entrances in the beginning of this match, the crowd instantly was the MVP of the night. They were just off the charts, going absolutely crazy for these guys. They loved Jericho, they sung along to Judas and all that, but they really loved Claudio as well. And they were popping for all the big moves of this match. A lot of craziness between Jericho and Claudio throughout this entire match. The first big highlight came when Jericho suplexed Claudio off of the ring apron and down onto the floor on the outside. But a little bit later on than that, we had a really cool sequence up on the top turnbuckle where Jericho attempted to hit a Hurricane Rana on Claudio and slam him off of the top, but Claudio managed to hold on to and grip Jericho's legs. But as Claudio was about to probably deliver some type of avalanche powerbomb, Jericho still managed to hit the Rana anyway, and down went Claudio. Both men traded submission holds at different points. Claudio at one point locked in the sharpshooter. A little bit later on, Jericho locked in the walls of Jericho. He even hit a code breaker out of nowhere at one point and only got a 2 count for it. But around the time when Jericho had the walls locked in, we saw Claudio manage to escape it, and he started stomping on Jericho's jaw, and then he went to hit the big giant swing, and he swung Jericho around for several rotations. I lost count. It wasn't a huge number. Like, we've seen Claudio or Cesaro, whatever you want to call him, we've seen him swing guys for a crazy amount of times, but this was not a huge number, but he did get a lot of it. So that was great to see, a very great moment in this match here. We saw Jericho try to cheat. He got Floyd the bat, his black baseball bat. He attempted to use it on Claudio, but when he went to strike him with it, Claudio managed to block it. He grabbed onto the bat and he blocked and prevented Jericho from hitting him with it. Claudio then went for either the Ricola bomb or the neutralizer. I couldn't tell, but he had Jericho in position for a big move, but Jericho managed to reverse it. But in doing so, he shoved Claudio forward and he kind of backed up referee Aubrey Edwards into the turnbuckle. He didn't take her out, but he kind of backed her up, so she was kind of lowered down, so she had her back turned, so she didn't see what took place afterwards, which was Claudio getting low blowed by Chris Jericho, followed by the Judas effect, and 1, 2, 3. Chris Jericho is an 8-time world champion, and for the first time ever in his career is the Ring of Honor world champion. This was a great match. The crowd was hot for it. I am very shocked by that finish. I never could have possibly imagined Chris Jericho as the Ring of Honor world champion. Something just don't seem too right about that. But I don't know. I still don't really know how to feel about that yet. You know, Jericho, like I said, he's been on a roll match-wise, but the whole gimmick with the Jericho Appreciation Society, not a huge fan of it. But this does make now 2 members of the Jericho Appreciation Society as Ring of Honor champions. Just a few weeks ago, we had 2 Blackpool Combat Club members who were ROH champions, with Claudio being the world champion and Wheeler Yuta being the ROH Pure champion. And now fast forward all these weeks later, Jericho just won the world title. Daniel Garcia is the Pure champion. Daniel Garcia came out there after the match with the rest of the Jericho Appreciation Society, but he didn't really overly cheer for Jericho getting the win. The rest of the members all hugged Jericho and all that, but Garcia was kind of standoffish. So whatever story they're telling there, that's still being told, and I assume that might play a role in how Jericho is going to be as the Ring of Honor world champion. But even bigger than storyline and all that, I wonder what kind of impact Chris Jericho as your Ring of Honor world champion will have business-wise on the Ring of Honor brand, in terms of them getting some type of TV deal, which months and months later, we still have no clue what the deal is, no sense of the direction of Ring of Honor TV. We just get random ROH championship matches here and there on TV every now and then, but really no idea of when they're going to get their own show. Maybe now that Jericho is the champion, maybe we might get a little insight and we might get closer to seeing that happen. I don't know, but very odd to see Jericho with this championship, but I am intrigued to see where it goes. But excellent start to the show. Up next was even better than that. It was a rematch from All Out, a rematch of the best match of the night at All Out. This being for the AEW World Tag Team titles, Swerve in Our Glory, Keith Lee, and Swerve Strickland defending their titles against the Acclaimed, Max Caster and Anthony Bowens, with Billy Gunn, aka Daddy Ass, in their corner. Swerve in Our Glory came out with Fabulous in their corner, and the Acclaimed, along with Daddy Ass, came out there with DJ Woo Kid. I'm not going to say it the same way that Justin Roberts and Excalibur were saying it, because I'm just not going to do that. But you had two different artists on both sides here, and this was not the last time we saw some type of rap influence on this show. We'll get to that a little bit later. But Swerve came out, he made his entrance first, got mega heat from the crowd. They did the whole Swerve's house thing, but immediately the crowd just booed the crap out of him. Keith Lee came out, he got a modest reaction, but the Acclaimed came out. They made their entrance, and holy shit, these people were going nuts for the Acclaim. They say it every week in their promos, but it is true. It is factual. Everyone loves the Acclaim. And how can't you? These guys were brought in basically as unknowns. Whether they had a huge presence on the indie scene or in other promotions, they weren't this top tag team name that everyone was raving about and couldn't wait to see come to AEW. For the longest time, they were one of the lower ranked teams. Their purpose was putting over other teams that were primed and ready for top spots. But through it all, through all the random Max Caster raps and the period of time Anthony Bowens was injured and all the different singles matches where they just got fed to other top names just to lose, and they really weren't doing a whole lot of important stuff on the show. They have busted their asses and they have fought their way through all of it and have still somehow managed to get even more over with these crowds. The raps are very controversial by a lot of people, very polarizing by a lot of people. Some love Max Caster's raps, some hate them. He had a rap on this show. I don't remember every single thing he said. He mentioned Cuomo. He compared Swerve and Lee to two different types of Pepsi, and he said something about a glory hole, which was a slam dunk. I'm surprised he didn't do that in the first rap. Maybe he was saving it for this one. I don't know. But the raps can be very polarizing. They're hit or miss sometimes, but these guys have a connection with these fans, so much so that that's why people were getting so upset about the outcome of the match at All Out, where the Acclaim lost. And people were like, oh man, they should have called a mid-match audible and give the Acclaim the win. I'm like, no need for that. You can save their big win for a bigger platform. Like, yes, that match at All Out was great, but if you don't remember, the build-up for that match was very weak. So it was not the right time for them to get that win with this match that came out of nowhere. It was an excellent match, but still. So now you have time to actually build to a rematch, build even more sympathy for the Acclaim, build even more heat for Swerve in Our Glory, mainly on Swerve, and build to the big moment on a big stage like Arthur Ashe for Grand Slam, and that's exactly what they did. This match, while I liked the All Out match just a little bit more as an overall match, I liked that one a little bit more. This one was an equally excellent match with an even better crowd and a far more satisfying finish to this match. We had a little bit of miscommunication going on throughout this match with Swerve and Keith Lee. At one point, when Keith Lee is exchanging a bunch of moves with the Acclaim, they get the better of Keith Lee. And I believe it was Max Caster getting an arm drag on Keith Lee. And Keith Lee looked amused. And then Caster, Bowens, Billy Gunn got on the apron. They went to do the whole scissor me daddy ass thing. And then Swerve tagged himself in, drop kicked everyone. And that kind of ticked off Keith Lee a little bit. He even went over, tapped him on the shoulder, like, hey, man, come on, what are you doing? So that was kind of the first glance of dissension and miscommunication between these two, which we've seen teased in some of their previous tag team championship matches. I believe there was even some of that going on in the match at All Out. So we've seen this before, and we saw it again in this match. At one point, we see Keith Lee and I believe Max Caster. They're fighting in the ring, but they're over by the ropes. And the referee, he's distracted. A lot of the referees on this show were distracted. And the referee was distracted, had his back turned. Swerve gets up on the apron with the boombox that Max Caster carries out to the ring. And he goes to hit it on Caster, but Caster ducks. And Swerve accidentally hits Keith Lee with it. So then Swerve gets knocked off the apron. Bowens takes down Keith Lee, and Max Caster goes up top, attempting to hit the mic drop elbow, but very weird. I don't know what happened here. It looked like maybe he undershot it and he missed it, and he came down on his knee. Now, this kind of took the fans, kind of deflated them a little bit, thinking that this might have been a real injury. I don't know if it was. Maybe it was, or just briefly tweaked his knee. I looked at it more like he kind of undershot the elbow and he just made up for it quick on his feet. Just thought to sell a knee injury instead. I don't know. Maybe I'm giving them a little more credit than they deserve, but I think Max Caster kind of just undershot the move a little bit and then thought quick on his feet to make up for it and then say that he injured his knee. So then they wrestled a little bit more. They kind of dominated on Anthony Bowens for a little bit. There was this really cool spot where Swerve hit a springboard 450 leg drop from the ring outside onto both Bowens and Caster. So he takes them both down, and then he comes face to face with Billy Gunn. And they kind of get in each other's faces, a little bit of jaw jacking back and forth. The referee is tending to, I believe, Max Caster, and maybe Keith Lee came over there at that point. I think Keith Lee was trying to deflate the situation, but he was over there. Max Caster was over there. They were off to the side, and the referee was distracted once again, had his back turned, and still on the outside, Anthony Bowens hits a spinning forearm on Swerve. And then daddy ass Billy Gunn comes over and hits him with a famouser right on the floor. Back in the ring, Keith Lee gets drop kicked off the apron. Anthony Bowens comes in, hits the unravel on Swerve, and then Caster goes back up top, comes down with the mic drop, elbow drop, and gets the win for the Acclaimed. They win their very first AEW tag team titles. A huge, thunderous pop from this crowd. They came to Arthur Ashe Stadium to see one thing, well, multiple things, but one main thing, and that was seeing the Acclaimed win those tag team titles, and they were rewarded beautifully. This was a great moment following a very great match and a well-deserved title win for the Acclaimed. As for Swerve and Keith Lee, they might stay a team for a little bit longer, maybe even get a rematch, but ultimately the goal has to be splitting these guys up and having Swerve turn on Lee and have this nice cocky heel run. Meanwhile, Keith Lee is the pissed off monster babyface who wants to go after him. So I think both men can fit into those categories very nicely in the future. We might not get it immediately, but I think ultimately that will be the destination in the foreseeable future. They had a backstage segment with FTR, who were congratulating the Acclaimed. They mentioned the fact that they have been the number one contenders for the tag team titles since about April. All of a sudden, they got interrupted by Billy Gunn's other sons, his real sons, the ones that are less over and no one really cares about. They came into the frame and they started mocking FTR. They called themselves a younger, better FTR, and said top guys out. This was a nothing segment. And all I could think was, this is the best you could come up with for FTR on this show. You know, it feels like the Acclaim kind of stole FTR's thunder, because throughout the spring into the summer, FTR was like the hottest tag team on the roster, and then they kind of faded to the background, and now all of a sudden the Acclaimed, who were popular in their own right, but they started to rise up a little bit more in their own right and kind of stole a little bit of that shine away from FTR. So I don't know about that. Maybe I'm alone in that mindset and that thinking, but I don't know. After this, we had an interview segment with Wheeler Yuta. He was on the stage with Tony Schiavone, who was interviewing him, asking him about his thoughts on the Danielson-John Moxley main event, when all of a sudden he got interrupted by MJF, who came out and got a huge pop from the crowd. And even when MJF was healing on the crowd and saying like, these people will cheer for me no matter what, he was right. And these people, they worship me. He called himself the devil and called all the fans devil worshipers, and they cheered every single thing he said. Even when he was putting down Yuta and he was putting down the rest of the Blackpool Combat Club, these fans were going crazy for MJF. He is the biggest babyface in the world, but he just does not know it yet. He is a babyface in denial because he tries so hard to heal on these crowds, but these crowds are having none of it. Occasionally, he'll say a line and they'll give him the desired reaction and they'll give him that heat, but 80-90% of the time, these fans are cheering the hell out of MJF. They have been for these last few weeks on TV. Wheeler Yuta had his time to speak and he started cutting a promo, and the fans did not care. In fact, they were kind of booing Wheeler Yuta because MJF is the guy that they like and is the top star in their minds. And Wheeler Yuta, who came out and got a pretty decent reaction, here he got an even bigger reaction, but it was solely negative. So Yuta started insulting MJF. He mentioned MJF's fiance. Of course, MJF recently got engaged over the weekend, so congratulations to MJF on his engagement. Yuta mentioned that in this promo, and he talked about how eventually she'll leave him when she realizes how spineless MJF is, and she'll leave him just the same and walk out on him the same way that MJF walked out on all the fans and all the boys in the back and all that stuff. Again, the fans, they kind of reacted to it, but they were very much booing Wheeler Yuta. At this point, MJF, he kind of mocked him. He said something about how Yuta has gone from dry paint levels of personality to actually having somewhat of a personality. So just a slight burial there, just slightly. And then MJF, he called them the Blackpool Cuckold Club, which got a chuckle out of me and the fans in the building. But he ran down all the names of the Blackpool Combat Club, at least Mox and Danielson. He talked shit about them, and then he mentioned William Regal and told Yuta that he'll still be able to, after whoever wins, they fall to MJF, Yuta will still be able to rely on William Regal for advice, but all Regal will be able to tell him about is how to pop pills. And at this point, Yuta popped MJF right in the mouth. He decked him, took him, kind of pushed him back a little bit. MJF connected with a headbutt. Meanwhile, Tony Schiavone is here the entire time on the stage, and he kind of trips over, and then MJF shoves him down. This got a negative reaction from the crowd. Out of everything that MJF said in this promo, the one time the fans truly booed him, genuinely booed him, was when he knocked over Tony Schiavone. Because you can call the fans a bunch of marks, you can talk shit about a bunch of people, and all this evil, dastardly stuff that MJF does, but when you shove over Tony Schiavone, that's when you messed up big. And so MJF, he shoves him over, he's looking down on him, just browbeating him, has his back turned to Wheeler Yuta. So when he turns back around, Yuta takes him down, starts raining down blows on him, when out of nowhere comes W. Morrissey, who of course is a member of that new faction of the firm led by, I was going to say Malcolm Bivens, but that's his old name. Of course, it is Stokely Hathaway. But we didn't get Stokely on this show, but we did get to see W. Morrissey, the former Big Cass. He came out and was choking out Yuta, and then he and MJF were beating him down. Eventually, security came out, broke this up. So this was the only real impact MJF had on the entire show. And this was not the last we saw of him. We saw plenty of him in that main event, but this was the only real impactful thing he did on the entire show. Another backstage segment, this one with TBS champion Jade Cargill. She was interviewed by Tony Schiavone. And it's like, well, Schiavone healed up pretty quickly, didn't he? He scooped himself together and ran to the back and started interviewing Jade Cargill. But the commentators did mention that this interview took place earlier in the day. Maybe they could have put a little tag in the corner of the screen that read earlier today, just to clear up any confusion for people who might not have heard it, or any of the people in the crowd who might have seen it live and they had no frame of reference, which to them it probably just looked goofy. But either way, Jade Cargill, she was being interviewed here, and she was talking about her upcoming TBS championship defense against Diamante on Rampage Grand Slam this upcoming week. Diamante mentioned the fact that she's going to have some muscle and some backup in her corner, who is even more of the baddest bitch in the world than Jade Cargill is. And out came Trina, the very popular rapper Trina, and my younger self immediately came back into my frame of mind with many thoughts of Trina from back in the day, one of my earlier crushes when I was a young lad. But it was very cool to see Trina on this show, and that was pretty badass. So we had on this show DJ Woo Kid, we had Fabulous, we have Trina here. Action Bronson's gonna be wrestling on Rampage this week. Weird world here. So that's all there is to that. Up next, another championship match, the AEW All Atlantic Championship on the line. Pac defending against Orange Cassidy. People shit on Orange Cassidy, but the dude knows how to wrestle. He still, to this day, has one of the best matches of the year. That match against Will Ospreay at the Forbidden Door show over the summer. This match, while not a match of the year contender, it was a good match. And I was expecting a title change here, at least going into the show. But then we ended up getting two straight championships changing hands earlier in the show, and I didn't think we were going for a clean sweep, so that kind of put it in the back of my mind that Pac might be walking out as the champion in this match. But it was still a good match. Pac was dominating majority of it, and Orange Cassidy was trying to throw him off his game with the mind games and the fake kicks and doing the whole Orange Cassidy shtick. But at different points in the match, Orange Cassidy was getting fired up and he was giving it right back to Pac. So much so that Pac had to resort to cheating in order to retain his championship. On the outside, Pac managed to swipe the hammer for the ring bell. He grabbed that and kind of had it away from the referee's point of view. The referee was still in the ring. I believe it was Bryce Remsburg. Orange Cassidy came outside, and then Pac kind of got him locked in a headlock type position, and he very quickly struck him with the hammer. And then he threw him back in the ring, got the cover, and retained his championship. The referee looked very sus of Pac and how Orange Cassidy just out of nowhere got knocked out like that. But the referee's decision is final. Man, that street That's 3 straight matches on this show where the referees look very incompetent. You had the low blow behind the referee's back in the first match. You had an outside competitor interfering in the tag team championship match. And now you have here Pac using an illegal object to retain his title. So, no real signs of where this is going to go. Good match, but this was the first kind of come down match of the show, but still a very good match. Up next, yet another good match, but probably the weakest match of the entire show. That being the Fatal 4-Way for the interim AEW Women's World Championship. Toni Storm, the champion, defending against Serena Deeb, Athena, and Britt Baker. I, for one, felt that as much as I like Athena and Britt Baker, they did not need to be in this match. But it made sense why they were there, especially Britt, and then later other people around, because you had the big impactful debut after the match. But before that special moment, we had the match itself, which was fine. Everyone did their thing. You have 4 very talented women in this match, and they all played their parts, they all played their roles perfectly well, and the match was a match. Whereas the first opening 2 matches of the show and even the main event felt like pay-per-view quality type matches, this one and the All-Atlantic Championship match both felt like TV matches, which is not bad. This is a TV show, so it's fine. But there was just nothing overly special about this match. There was something very brutal and violent in this match. We had Athena in the ring. She had Britt Baker up on her shoulders, and then Serena Deeb went to attack her, and then Athena managed to hold on to her too, almost in like a World's Strongest Slam type position. So she has both women held together here, and then she does this big slam, but she dumps both women. Serena goes back, but Britt kind of falls a little closer, and it looked like Athena smashed right down onto Britt's face, because a little bit later on, Britt came up with a bloody nose. It's not the first time we've had the sight of Britt Baker with the bloody nose and the bloody face, and they even kind of played up into that a little bit later on with a certain camera shot showing Britt's bloody face, very reminiscent of the Lights Out match that she had with Thunder Rosa back in 2021. So, sucks for her if she ended up breaking her nose. Very unfortunate. But she did play into the finish because there was a series of counters with crucifix roll-ups between Toni Storm and Britt Baker. Toni Storm got the better of it, and she got the crucifix pin and retained her championship. And I thought here, well, that's a very flat way for this to finish. This clearly can't be the end here. And it was not, because after the match, Britt Baker attacked her. Out came Jamie Hayter, who has been very cold towards Britt ever since All Out when she got screwed out of the championship. We saw her come out last week and she attacked Toni, but she still didn't want anything to do with Britt. So this week it looked kind of similar where she attacked Toni, but this time she actually did join up with Britt Baker. They hugged, all that stuff. Kind of lame. I was kind of getting into the idea of Jamie Hayter finally turning on Britt Baker and maybe pushing that story a little bit closer. We could get it in the future, but for now, it is on hold. So the two of them were beating down Toni Storm. Serena Deeb joined in the fight. She was beating down Athena. Athena was then put in position to get the curb stomp from Britt Baker. And then when Britt Baker retrieved her glove, bloodied face and all, she was going to go for her submission on one of the baby faces, when all of a sudden we hear very unfamiliar theme music. We see a lot of static and stuff on the Titantron, and then the name Saraya comes up on the Tron, and the fans, I feel like a broken record at this point saying this, but once again, the fans lose their minds because they know that that means the debut of a brand new female to the AEW roster, that being SARAYA KNIGHT, formerly known as Paige in WWE. She comes out, receives just a huge reaction, and you can see it on her face. She is just loving it. She comes down to the ring, the heels clear out. She's kind of taunting them a little bit. She helps out the baby faces. She came out the babyface tunnel, so if that gives you any insight on what her alignment is, I thought this was a great moment. The match itself, like I said, it was a match, whatever. The real story here was this, and I thought that this was an incredible moment. We know the history with Saraya, Paige, whatever you want to call her, and we know the likelihood of her stepping back into the ring seemed very slim to the chance of not ever happening again for a very long time there. But she has followed in the footsteps of the likes of Bryan Danielson and Edge and a lot of these other people who were once told you will never be clear to wrestle again. Stone Cold Steve Austin wrestled his first match since 2003, earlier this year at WrestleMania. So all these people who had concussion issues or neck issues or what have you, they were told no, you can never wrestle again, and then they all come back. And now here we see Saraya in AEW, a great pickup for them. Their women's division is still a little iffy. It can still be up and down, but for the most part, it has greatly improved compared to what it once was. And so with the addition of Saraya on the roster, that is a new star to immediately push straight to the moon. She could probably enter a feud with Britt Baker right now. That seemed to kind of be the main setup here. The main reaction that everyone was looking at was Britt Baker's reaction, because that was what the camera focused on. So you have to assume that'll be the first big program here, which will be nice, especially if the champion is doing other things with other people. Maybe Serena Deeb, I don't know. But great moment here. You have to assume she's going to wrestle again. And what's that going to look like? She hasn't wrestled in 5 years. You know, I am optimistic that she will do just fine. I believe her when she says that she is good to go and she feels healthy, and I trust that when the time comes for her to step back into the ring, she will do just fine. She'll be safe, all that good stuff, and I'm just happy to see her back. And I'm happy that she got to get a huge moment like this on a big, grand stage like this. So, good stuff here. And that leads us to the main event for the vacant AEW World Championship. I'm not going to mention all the stuff from the media scrum after All Out and all the stuff that led us to this moment. It's pointless. You've all heard it 1,000 times over by now. We can put that to the wayside and just focus on what happened here, and that being the vacant championship being contested by Blackpool Combat Club members Jon Moxley and Bryan Danielson. William Regal was sitting in on commentary, and MJF was in the crowd. He was in one of the higher seats in the crowd, and he was dead center in the middle, at least camera wise. I believe they even had his image up on the Tron, and they just kept cutting back to him multiple times. He was sitting there. He had the big poker chip that he won at All Out. They kept cutting back to him and his reactions all throughout the match. It kind of took away from the match a little bit. It made you think, like, there's no way something could happen here, but they just kept focusing on him so much throughout the match that it made you think something might happen, but nothing did. We instead just had a really kick-ass main event. Jon Moxley and Bryan Danielson, they had a match at the Revolution pay-per-view earlier this year and had a great match. Fast forward all these months later, they had yet another great match. Very hard-hitting, very stiff, very brutal, kind of scary at different points. No blood from Jon Moxley, which was shocking. This is yet another Jon Moxley match where there was no blood whatsoever. So, kudos to him. He does not have to rely on it as heavily as he did in his interim champion run over the course of the summer, where it felt like every single match this guy was in, he or his opponent was bleeding. So, very good stuff. This match didn't need the blood. I guess it would have fit, but it didn't need it. And these two guys, these two badass wrestlers, just went out there and kicked ass and had a great match. This was a great main event match. Like I said, kind of scary at different points. Danielson was taking moves and landing on his head and neck area a little bit, kind of rough, but he seemed to come out of it okay. We see Danielson hit the running knee, the Busaiku knee on Moxley, only good for a 2 count. A little bit later on, Moxley hits the Death Rider, that also only good for a 2 count. Both men had their hands interlocked. They started brawling with each other. Brian got the upper hand, got Mox down flat on the mat, started stomping on him. Mox reversed it. He and Danielson were both on the mat sitting upright, and then Mox just started laying the boots into Danielson's face. Eventually, later on, Danielson managed to lock in the label lock, and he kept clawing and scratching at Moxley's face, but Moxley eventually managed to get the bottom rope to break the submission. They fight on the ramp, which I should mention, the ramp and stage setup looked excellent on this show too. It was interesting because the ramp, it looked it had this sliding texture on it. Earlier in the night, where the Wheeler Yuta MJF stuff, when Yuta was raining down blows on MJF, they were sliding as Yuta was punching him. And that same element here played into this match because we see Moxley hit the elevated Death Rider again on Danielson, this time on the ramp. But he does so, he hits the move, and then Danielson kind of rolls and slides down the ramp back into the ring because the rampway was connected directly to the ring. So he slides back into the ring. Moxley immediately scurries, gets back in the ring, goes for the cover, only good for a 2 count. He then locks in the sleeper hold, locks it in very deep, and eventually Danielson has no choice, and he ends up passing out. And Jon Moxley becomes the first ever 3-time AEW World Champion. I did not expect that. This is a man, Jon Moxley, who a few weeks ago was supposed to be set for a vacation. But then all the crap happened at All Out, and then fast forward here a few weeks later, and Moxley is once again your AEW World Champion. It's amazing how just like that, anything can change. And like I mentioned at the top of the video here, it feels like All Out was basically a fever dream, and like it never happened, because everything has basically been undone, at least as far as the main event picture is concerned. It's almost like that never even happened. And we're right back. Things are set back where they were before, now with Jon Moxley as the AEW World Champion, which I have no issue with. I would have preferred seeing Danielson get the championship. Danielson's lost a lot of big matches over the course of the year, and I get that he doesn't have to win all of his big matches. He's a made name, all that stuff, what have you. But he does lose a little more than I would like to see him lose. And I thought it'd be cool to see him get the win here. Tony Khan obviously had other plans, and he once again went back to his tried and true soldier of Jon Moxley, the man who he relied on all summer to carry the flag as the interim champion. Stuff happened, and then he lost the title, and even more stuff happened, and now once again Moxley is the champion. They kind of rushed off the air as William Regal was coming down the ramp, getting in the ring, was going to present the belt to Moxley. They cut it off right there. It went right to young Sheldon. So I didn't see what happened, but it looked like Danielson snatched the belt away from Regal, and he was going to present the championship himself to Jon Moxley. So I assume that's what happened. Maybe other stuff happened. I know they were about to go into the tapings for Rampage this week, but aside from that, I don't know what else could have happened. But don't love the rushed sign off there at the end. Couldn't get a chance to let the moment breathe. Jon Moxley just became a 3-time world champion following an incredible main event against Bryan Danielson. And within a few seconds, we see young Sheldon on TV. So, it is what it is. But again, even though I would have liked to have seen Danielson get the win, I have no issue with Moxley as champion. The dude is the heart and soul of this company. He's said it in promos. It is true. It is a fact. It's not up for debate. You don't have to like Jon Moxley, but that does not make it any less true. And so now he will be the champion. He will be the target for MJF. When will that happen? I assume they can build it up a little bit and build it to Full Gear in November. You're so close. November is not that far off. Full Gear is not that far off. You can build up to it a little bit longer. In the meantime, Moxley can defend the championship against the winner of this big battle royal coming up on Rampage this week, along with a bunch of other big matches happening on Rampage Grand Slam this week. Just a stacked card. So this might make me watch Rampage this week, which I gotta tell you, I don't really usually watch because Rampage is a waste of a show. So I might watch it this week. Might even review it. I don't know. But I knew I wanted to talk about this show, and I'm glad that I did, because this was an amazing show, top to bottom, one of the best episodes of Dynamite in a long time, probably ever. And like I said before, even though no match on this show could hold a candle to the Danielson Omega match from last year, I think as a overall show, it has a slight edge over that show last year. But let me know your thoughts. Leave a comment down below. And if you liked what you saw and you liked what you heard, go ahead and leave a like. Like this video, subscribe to the channel to hear me talk even more about AEW and WWE in past and future videos. And follow me on Twitter, where I live tweet as much as possible for these certain shows, and tweet about any other random thing I want to talk about, wrestling related or otherwise. So stay in the loop, stay connected, and stay locked in on this channel for more future reviews. And thank you for listening today, tonight, whenever it is you're listening to this. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. So thank you. Take care.